It's time to step behind the scenes and take a closer look at the Owen Sound Attack. This is Bear Tracker Weekly. Here's your host, JC Coots.
Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Bear Tracker Weekly. My name is JC. Thank you so much for joining us. We've got a lot to talk about this week and a lot of people to talk to this week as the Owen Sound Attack had 3 home games, including a Wednesday night win over the Sarnia Sting, a thrilling overtime victory on Hockey Fights Cancer Night Saturday night against the Kitchener Rangers, and Sunday, unfortunately, a hard-fought loss against the Sudbury Wolves. In all cases, it's going to be a busy episode this week. We have a lot to talk about and a lot of guests who are going to be joining us. First up, because Sarnia was in town on Wednesday, had the opportunity to chat with Leigh Cunningham. He's the play-by-play radio voice of the Sarnia Sting. We'll also speak to another broadcaster from the Sudbury Wolves. David Bowen will join us to talk about the team and his young career so far as an OHL play-by-play announcer. Big news in the league this week was that vote by the NCAA finally went through, which now paves the way for OHL players to play Division I hockey. And we'll talk to a couple of players who've been affected by those changes. The first player from the OHL to sign on to the NCAA, Kitchener Rangers goaltender Jackson Parsons, will join us. Plus, the Owen Sound Attack were able to bring in an NCAA committed player to join the ranks, one that they had drafted. Mason Roy made his Bayshore debut over the weekend. We'll chat with him about that and his thoughts on this whole change. Plus, we've gathered the Media Roundtable once again to talk about the changes and what it might mean for the OHL and for players involved. It is a busy episode of the Bear Tracker Weekly podcast. Let's get it started. Leigh Cunningham is the radio play-by-play voice of the Sarnia Sting. He's been active in the OHL since the 98-99 season, with stops in London, North Bay, Windsor, Saginaw, and now his hometown of Sarnia. I had a chance to chat with Leigh before the Sarnia Sting's loss in Owen Sound on Wednesday over the phone. This is the first phone interview for Bear Tracker Weekly. Leigh, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask everybody. Where did you grow up and what first made you love hockey?
I was born and raised in Sarnia, Ontario, and I've been playing the game since I was a kid. Obviously, the career ended years ago, but we played road hockey by the hour as kids, and I played SMA House League hockey when I was a young kid growing up, and those were some of the best days of my life. And I've always been a collector of different hockey memorabilia, be it old Hockey Illustrated magazines or my hockey card collection that remains intact to this day. So I started very young with a love for the game, and it hasn't diminished over the years.
All right. Now, you said hockey card collection, so I have to ask you, do you have a prized possession in that collection?
Well, a rookie Gretzky usually qualifies.
You've got that?
Example of a rookie Gretzky card, from 79-80, and I got some good rookies.
So I'm talking to a millionaire right now.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's tucked away and safely ensconced in a little safe somewhere. So, but I'm not exactly sure what the value is. I've never had it graded before, but it's a pretty good sample, and obviously, it was a card I think I yanked out of a pack when I was a kid back in the day when I was in grade, 7 or 8 or something like that. So, that would probably stick out as the best of the bunch.
Wow. I don't think I've ever had the opportunity to speak to someone that owns one of those cards, so that's pretty cool, Leigh. Let's talk about how you got into broadcasting. You and I, we work for the same broadcasting company, Blackburn Media. Of course, you're down in Sarnia there. Tell me what brought you into broadcasting.
I always wanted to do play-by-play for hockey, even as a kid. Even just when I was watching Hockey Night in Canada when I was young, I found myself kind of, mouthing what was going on as the play went on. So I guess I came by the interest very early on and attended Fanshawe College, graduated from there many, many years ago now. And, I had an opportunity to start doing some sports at AM 800 in Windsor years ago. And that kind of, moved me into the sports area a little bit, which I wanted to branch into quite obviously. And I got a break years ago doing the radio for the London Knights back in 98, 99, and we've been going ever since.
Wow. And you actually, I think last March, if I'm not mistaken, you celebrated 1,500 games with Sarnia. That must have been a pretty cool honor.
Yeah, well, 1,500 games overall, regular season and playoff games, and that was a couple of Marches ago now. So I think I've added another 100 or so to that particular list. I don't know if I'll get to 2,000, but if somebody wants to maybe have me around until then, we might give it a go. But yeah, it was a really cool night. A lot of my friends were there, and I had some family there, and it was just really nice of the Sarnia Sting organization to acknowledge that. And I remember when I was the young guy in the league, and obviously those days have passed, but it was a real nice recognition that night a couple of seasons ago.
That's awesome. Tell me about the experience in getting to be around the Sarnia Sting. So far, I've had the opportunity to talk to play-by-play announcers from London, Kitchener, Saginaw, Flint. Tell me what life is like in Sarnia and what that fan base is like cheering for the Sting.
I'll tell you what, it is growing by the day. It really, really is. Obviously sparked by that run the team made a couple of years ago in which they went to the Western Conference Final and lost to the London Knights in that series. But it really has been growing. And the staff with the Sarnia Sting does a fabulous job with their outreach and, getting into the schools, getting into the community. And, I think this fan base is supported by all the kids and the, young teens that love to come to these games all of a sudden. And, hey, it's great to see because with kids come parents, and it makes for a great environment. And, the building in Sarnia, affectionately called the Hive, I've never seen it so busy and boisterous with enthusiasm and activity than I have over the last couple of years. And it is not tapering off at all. The interest level is still very strong. And it's great to see, considering I'm from this hometown and considering, again, it makes just for a great environment from a broadcast perspective as well.
Tell me about your thoughts on this year's crop of the Sarnia Sting, this year's team. Obviously, we're recording this before the Sting play the Owen Sound Attack on Wednesday night at the Bayshore. Owen Sound, I think, are looking at this as kind of a way to get back into the wing column, being that Sarnia, I know, is a little weaker right now. They've got a couple guys at the U17. So just tell me about the team and where they're at and where they might end up by the end of the season.
Well, I think it's been a good start, JC, to be totally honest with you. A lot of young players are getting some great seasoning. You alluded to two of them. Beckham Edwards, who has a share of the rookie goal-scoring lead. He, of course, is with Canada White at the under-17, and that's being staged in Sarnia. So a nice little perk for he and Alessandro Diorio, who won second overall in the priority selection. He got off to a little bit of a slow start offensively, but has really picked things up. He had a 7-game point streak not that long ago prior to joining Team Canada Red at the under-17. So those are two prime pieces for this hockey club. But they're also surrounded by some veterans that are starting to really find their rhythm offensively. Easton Wainwright, 8 goals, 14 points. You got players like Tyson Doucette, 7 goals, 12 assists. So it's a nice mix right now of these young guys that have come up and really found early rhythm at the OHL level, and some of the players that the team has relied upon in the past that are really starting to find their groove a little bit offensively. So it's a nice mix, and you throw in a good goaltending combination. Nick Sergic has been very, very good for the Sarnia Sting by and large this year. And Evan Millett, who was a former Kitchener Ranger prospect, he's come in and supported Nick very well. So, there's a lot of good things going with this hockey club right now. They're very, very they're a very resilient group. They've had a lot of comeback efforts that has resulted in either a point or two. They're tied for the most games in overtime with the Ottawa 67s right now in the OHL. So I think that speaks of their ability to stay in hockey games. Leads in the first period are starting to come a little bit more, but I think that's an area that they would like to address. And I think they would certainly like a little bit of an upgrade with their power play, which has been a little bit up and down this season.
Pretty cool to have an international hockey tournament in your own backyard, in your own building. Have you taken in any of the action?
Yeah. I was up there a couple of nights ago. Last night I couldn't make it up due to a prior commitment and getting ready for 3 road games this week. Obviously, the Sting are displaced with their home building being used for the under-17, but it's been nicely embraced here. A lot of very good caliber players. Boy, that game the other night against the Americans and Canada Red was just up and down, great pace, and you can see why this tournament has been heavily scouted. I don't know how many NHL scouts were in the building the other night, but there was, I would say every team was represented. I'd be shocked if not every team wasn't represented at that event. So it's been a good environment and obviously a boon for the Sarnia area when you factor in restaurants and lodging and things of that nature. So very prestigious event to land, and this is the second time Sarnia's hosted it.
I'm going to say second time, which means obviously they liked it so much that they decided to host it there again. Does this kind of, do you think, maybe open the door to other big tournaments, whether it be sports or event related, since Sarnia has now shown twice that they can accommodate a world event?
Good question. You'd have to ask the management team with the Sting how much they would like to maybe try and get an under 18 or maybe throw their hat in for a World Junior Hockey Championship. It's a very, very interesting question, but certainly they've put themselves on the map with Hockey Canada having hosted this event now twice.
Well, it's been great to talk to you, Leigh Cunningham, play-by-play voice of the Sarnia Sting. You're going to be making the drive up to the Bay Shore tonight, so I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk over the phone today, and best of luck to you and the Sarnia Sting this season, sir.
We appreciate that very much, and nice to make the trip to the Bay Shore with nice, dry pavement, that is for sure.
And we'll have the best fries in the league waiting for you when you get here.
Yeah. According to Mike Farwell, that seems to be the case. I usually get there, and I don't really have a whole lot to eat before a broadcast. I kind of just like getting my notes together. But if Mike Farwell has that endorsement, then I got to go along with it.
It's a sound one from everybody I've talked to. It's a good one. we'll
yes, indeed. I may have to break down and send my broadcast partner Patty DeRozier down there to see if everyone is right on that subject.
I'll try to set a plate over your way tonight.
Appreciate it.
Moving on now, from a veteran broadcaster in Leigh Cunningham, we get to meet one of the younger, new broadcasters in the Ontario Hockey League, David Bowen. David is going to be turning 24 this week. He is the play-by-play radio announcer for the Sudbury Wolves. And if you've recognized David's last name, yes, you're right. His dad is Joe Bowen of Toronto Maple Leafs play-by-play fame. I had a chance to talk to David about growing up the son of Joe Bowen and around the Toronto Maple Leafs organization, plus getting to play in the OHL as a goaltender himself with the Sudbury Wolves, where his dad started his broadcasting career 50 years ago. This is my conversation with David Bowen before the Wolves' 3-1 win over the Owen Sound Attack on Sunday afternoon. David, I'm going to ask you the same get-to-know-you question I ask everybody on the podcast, and I do kind of know your answer a little bit, so be as long-winded with your response as you want. Sure. Where did you grow up? What first made you love hockey?
Oh, yeah. So I grew up in Unionville, Ontario, which is a small town just outside of Markham, which is about 30 minutes from Toronto. What made me love hockey? I mean, I grew up in a rather hockey-dominant household. Obviously, my dad's been doing the Leaf games for a very long time, so the term we use is brainwashed as a young child, and I had no choice but to be a Toronto Maple Leaf fan, and was obviously pretty lucky to go see a bunch of Leaf games growing up. So I fell in love with hockey right away, and eventually started playing as a young kid. I can't remember the first time I put on skates. I started off as a forward, and then eventually my mom was my house league coach, and she put me in net for a game, and we won the game, and then she put me in the net for the finals, and we won that game, and I was like, I might keep with this goalie thing, and that kind of stuck with me all throughout my childhood, and obviously led me up here to Sudbury, played a little bit with them, spent the majority of my time in the OJHL, and and now kind of transitioning into the broadcasting. I never thought I'd be kind of following in my dad's footsteps like this, but more than anything, I love the game, and still gets the excitement going. Even though you're not on the ice playing the game, the atmosphere and everything, I really enjoy being around it. So yeah, that's kind of the story for me. I had no choice but to love hockey as a youngster.
I got to ask you, I've got so many questions. Let's start with just your playing days, because our time in Sudbury kind of overlapped. You were coming in right around, I think you got called up in February 2020, played a couple of games with the Wolves, did great, and then pandemic happened, and that was that what the reason that why your playing career was kind of derailed, was because of the pandemic and the lost season? It's tough enough when you're a goalie trying to get a job.
Yeah. So drafted by the Wolves in 2016, and eventually signed with them the following year after camp, and then the next 3 seasons. Kind of got various opportunities with them. It didn't always go as well as it did in February 2020, but kind of bided my time. There was a goalie by the name of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen that kind of stole the net from anyone else that wanted it at one point in time for the Sudbury Wolves, but that was for good reason, obviously, winning OHL Player of the Year that year, so didn't get the opportunity to steal the net from him, but February, like, that season was crazy. I really thought I had a chance to make the Wolves out of main camp, and as you said, goaltending's there's only 2 spots, and a couple bad exhibition games that didn't quite go very well, and that kind of lost my spot. Went back and played in the NOJHL, then went to the Quebec League for a bit, spent 2 months there, then came back to the NOJHL, and then got called up to the Wolves. Obviously, the highlight of my career that I'll tell my grandkids was getting my 1 shutout in the OHL. I get chirped by the boys all the time about that still to this day, but I don't care. I got the puck at home. I'll make sure to put that in the man cave one day, but that was the pandemic was unfortunate. I mean, everyone struggled during the pandemic and lost out in some sort of way. But 2 wins there, and then the pandemic hits, and shortly after that, I was going to school at Laurentian. Laurentian filed for bankruptcy, and I was committed to play for the Laurentian hockey team, and kind of found out late in the spring that there wasn't going to be a team, and then kind of sent an email out to all the Canadian universities saying, hey, here's my resume. Like, I think I deserve a chance, but everyone had already kind of picked their roster at that point, and kind of asked myself, am I one of 64 best goalies in the world? I don't think so. Probably time to start going to school and get a degree. So, that's kind of an unfortunate way for it to come to an end, but I wouldn't change anything. I enjoyed my playing days, but I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing now, and I've got a great opportunity doing what I'm doing for the Wolves now.
Yeah, it may not have been the storybook ending to a playing career, but all of a sudden you're kind of back in the mix. Is it easy because you're not so far removed from your playing days and you've had a little bit of that experience, so it must be easier as a broadcaster now to kind of have that relationship with the players because you kind of know what they've been through and you're not that much older than them.
No, for sure. Playing the game and being not too far removed from it, I certainly can relate to some of the guys, more so the goalies for sure. I'd say I have a closer relationship with them just because that was the position I played, and last night was a tough one for the Wolves and gave up 8 goals against, and I've been there too, so I'm able to kind of put an arm around them and say keep your head up kind of thing. But I'd say it's definitely an advantage that I'm not too far removed from the game, and kind of helps me calling the game as well. Just I don't know what it is about goalies and being broadcasters. There seems to be a lot of us that do it, and I don't know why that is. My reasoning is kind of we watch the game the whole time while we're on the ice and kind of know when there's going to be a good scoring chance or there isn't going to be a good scoring chance type thing, and I think that's helped me in the broadcast booth for sure.
Now, of course, I have to ask you about your dad. We can't bury the lead because your dad is Joe Bowen, and if you're a Leafs fan, I am a diehard Senators fan, but I respect good commentators, and Joe Bowen is one of the best in the business. I have a brief little Joe Bowen story for you, an interaction with him, and I'm at an age where I can say this happened 20 years ago, but I was an Algonquin College broadcasting student. My job was to cover the Ottawa Senators, and the playoffs came around, and of course the Leafs come into town, and I get pushed all the way to the end of the press box, and whenever I need to use the washroom, it's directly behind the Toronto Maple Leafs play-by-play booth. Joe Bowen, you could say that your dad gets a little animated when something happens, and when a playoff goal happens, well, let's say one was scored that night. Play had been kind of quiet. I'm in the men's room, and let's say a cleanup on aisle 6 was needed thanks to Matt Sundin and Joe Bowen because he scared the crap out of me with that holy Mackinac. Just unbelievable. And that's something I've seen you say this before. You're not going to steal from Dad when it comes to that. That's Dad's thing, not yours.
Yeah, I mean, well, that's something that came to him naturally. And the story goes, his dad growing up, when they would sit and watch hockey games, instead of saying holy, his dad would say holy Mackinac. And the story goes, he blurted it out one time on the Wolves call, and his color commentator at the time kind of looked at him and laughed, and he said, you know what, if that made him laugh, it probably made some people on the other end of the call laugh as well, and kind of stuck with it. And yeah, for sure now it's his catchphrase. And for me, I don't. It's a tough one. It's not like I don't have the right to not say it or to say it, but it would have to be something pretty monumental for me to bring out the Holy Mackinac, maybe like a Wolves championship or something along those lines. But I'm waiting for my own kind of catchphrase to catch on. Still haven't picked one quite yet. I know I steal from different calls that I hear in the National Hockey League other than just my dad's, but yeah, that's his, and I'm gonna leave it his for the time being at least. Yeah.
There was an article about you, I think it was just yesterday, in the Toronto Star. Ken Campbell wrote it, and I kind of got the sense as he was talking to both you and your dad that even though Joe Bowen's your dad, and even though he's well known, you're more like, I'm going to do this on my own, and I'm going to earn this on my own, which kind of to me says that if the day ever comes that your dad's like, I think I'm done calling the Leafs games, and you were to step in, you'll have earned it. Like, you've done the time, you've ridden the bus, you've gone. We always say in radio, you have to move to Northern Ontario to get your start. You've done all that, man. So it's going to be like well earned if it ever does happen for you.
Yeah, I hope so. And in the article too, Ken kind of mentions that my dad's contract is coming to an end and it might align with when I'm graduating, kind of thing. But I told Ken, I was like, I wouldn't be so sure that it's going to be the end of the road for my dad. I've heard that a couple times now. So. Yeah, wherever my journey takes me, I'm not being expected to just be handed the keys to doing the Maple Leaf games. That's certainly not how I think it's going to play out. And I'm trying my best to earn it the best I can. And here we are in Owen Sound, another trip on the road and doing the game on my own. So I'd like to think that I'm trying to put in the work and become a better broadcaster of my own. But we'll see where the road takes me. It's not a guaranteed thing that I'm just going to take the job from my dad, kind of thing. I really don't think that's how I'm approaching the next 5-year plan of my life. We'll see what happens after I graduate and what opportunities are out there for me.
Perfect. Well, let's talk about this year's version of the Sudbury Wolves. First, we'll talk about the Quentin Musty drama, because that started the season. We are kind of familiar with player drama here in Owen Sound. We started the season with that. We saw a trade. Quentin did not. Now he's back. Are all wounds healed and everyone's all lovey-dovey again?
Yeah, from what I can tell, I mean, some players that he played with last season, he's good buddies with Nathan Villeneuve. They seem to be chumming it up just like old times again. So I don't think there's any ill will towards him. And to give him credit, since he's returned, he's working hard. And I think Scott Barney and the coaching staff are rewarding him for doing some of the little things on the ice, back-checking, playing some more defense in his own zone kind of thing. But in terms of the future of 27 in blue and white, that's not up to me. It's not up to any of the people in Sudbury. It's up to General Manager Rob Papineau to come up with a decision for that. But for the first month of the season, he wasn't here. He was kind of waiting for a trade, and it never happened. So we'll see what happens in the future. But for now, he's still a Sudbury Wolf. The Wolves are kind of in this, how do I say, kind of right in the middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference. It looks like it could either swing one way or the other right now. So I think it'll kind of depend where this team is at in the standings when we get closer to that trade deadline day to see what happens with Musty for sure.
Last year, some said that version of the Sudbury Wolves, that roster, was potentially one of the best teams in 50 years. Is this version now in 2024 better, the same, or maybe a little bit behind where last year's team was?
Yeah, I would say you could ask Scott Barney. He said it a couple times. There's going to be teams in the league that are more talented than this Sudbury Wolves roster, but Scott is trying to instill that the old saying goes, hard work beats talent when talent fails to work hard, and the Wolves are trying to do that. And on some nights it works for them, and on some nights when they don't skate hard and they don't play as hard as they could, you get results like what happened last night in Barrie. So I would say it's certainly not as talented as what the Wolves had last year. I mean, that top unit of Dvorsky, Goyette, and Musty combined for a ridiculous amount of points last year. And certainly in my time doing the games, I haven't seen a team being able to score as many goals as the Wolves did per game. So it's a different team. It's not as talented, but I would say Scott's got them working a little bit harder in the defensive zone, and they win games a little differently this year than they did last year. It's not going to be like 90s hockey where they win games consistently 7-4, 6-3. It's going to have to be more of a 2-1, 3-2 type Sudbury Wolves team this year.
Well, I'm not going to lie, I kind of miss a Sudbury Saturday night, but I kind of love a Bayshore Saturday night too. David Bowen, it was great to talk to you, learn more about you. Best of luck to the Sudbury Wolves this season, and best of luck to you in your career, sir. It's going to be pretty bright.
Thank you, JC. I appreciate it.
On Thursday this week, the much-anticipated NCAA decision to allow OHL players to be eligible was made, and it did not take long to start to see the effects. The first OHL player to commit to the NCAA is Jackson Parson, goaltender for the Kitchener Rangers. He has committed to Clarkson University for the 2025-2026 season. He made the announcement on social media on Friday, just a day after the official announcement from the NCAA. I had a chance to chat with Jackson Parsons after the Kitchener Rangers' overtime loss to Owen Sound on Saturday evening.
Jackson, I'm going to ask you the same question everybody gets. Where did you grow up? What first made you fall in love with hockey?
Yeah, I grew up in Embrun, Ontario, and I think that, I was lucky enough to grow up in a town where it seemed like everyone played hockey. All my buddies did as well, so I kind of just grew up with the game, and obviously I love it now.
Now, you're making some news this week. Let's not bury the lead here. You made OHL history as the first OHL player to commit to NCAA. First of all, congratulations on that. What does it mean to you to not only be part of history, but also have this opportunity in front of you?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's obviously so cool, to be able to make history like that and to go to such a prestigious program like Clarkson. It's the best of both worlds, honestly, and I'm honored.
You're obviously, this decision was just last week, and already we're starting to see the effects. You're just the first of, I'm sure, what will be quite a few OHL players that are going to be continuing on their education. What does this mean from a player's perspective that you guys now have this ability?
No, exactly. It's awesome. Now we don't have to choose between one or the other, right? So to be able to do both and be able to play in two of the best leagues to develop to the NHL, it's awesome.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. I'm going to have to ask you about the game tonight. Sorry to change the mood a little bit, but Kitchener Rangers just had their 10-game winning streak come to an end, an overtime loss in Owen Sound. First of all, talk about the comeback in that third period, because this was a game that featured your team down 4-1 heading into the third. It must have been nice to see that game get tied.
No, 100%. I think that, my goalie partner, Schaubel, kept us in it 100%. And it shows the resilience in our group. We never give up, and we knew that we were going to make some noise. Honestly, coming back into the third, we knew that we were going to come back, and obviously, the win streak is over, but the point streak continues, and we're going to get another win tomorrow.
A shutout for you the night before against the Sioux, 4-0 you guys win. Schaubel gets the call tonight. Tell me about the relationship between you two, because Kitchener's got two really good goalies right now.
No, 100%. Schaubs, he's an unbelievable kid. He's just 16. I think he's only 15 right now. I think he actually has a late birthday, so it's wild to see how well he's doing, and I'm so happy for him. And just trying to tell him, some of the things about the league, and, hopefully he learned something from me.
Now, I'll ask you about the team. Obviously, you guys have been playing very well. I think you're probably defying a few expectations with how well the team has played this year. What's different in Kitchener? Why are things clicking together so well right now?
Yeah, I think it's honestly our group. We're such a tight-knit group, and with our coaches too. They hold us accountable, and we hold each other accountable as well. So it's an awesome environment and an awesome culture we have here in Kitchener, and other teams in the OHL, I'm sure, are jealous of it, honestly.
Well, Jackson, congratulations again on the news that you're the first OHL player to commit to NCAA. That is awesome, and unfortunately I can't say congratulations on the win tonight, but continued success to you and your teammates this season.
Thank you very much.
Another player to quickly benefit from the NCAA eligibility change and to also benefit the Owen Sound attack, who needed defensive help, was Mason Roy. Mason was the Attack's second-round pick in this past year's OHL priority selection draft. He had already committed to Providence of NCAA Division I, meaning that he had to play with the Burlington Cougars of the OJHL. As a result of the injuries that the Attack have sustained on their blue line and the new eligibility rule change, it meant that Mason got to make his Attack debut on Saturday night. I had a chance to catch up with him about the decision and about his fresh start in the OHL after the Attack's 3-1 loss to the Sudbury Wolves on Sunday.
I'll ask you the same get-to-know-you question that everyone gets on the show. Where did you grow up, and what first made you fall in love with hockey?
I grew up in Campbellville, Ontario, and I fell in love with hockey probably just playing on my outdoor rink with my family, my older brother, my dad, my sister.
Nice. Well, obviously there's been a lot of big changes for you this week. You started the week as a member of the Burlington Cougars of the OJHL. Now you're with the Owen Sound Attack thanks to that NCAA change. That couldn't have come at a better time for the Attack, who are looking for some help on D. So you slide into the lineup. Just your initial thoughts. What's the difference between playing in the OJHL and then stepping up into the OHL? How was the weekend for you?
It was really exciting. I think the game was probably a little bit faster. It was a lot of fun this week. Yeah.
How did it all come together? When did the first call come from Dale that, hey, we need you here because this has changed now and you don't have to worry about losing your NCAA commitment? How did that all happen for you? And are you happy that it's gone out this way?
Yeah, I'm really happy. It happened. I was on the bus to Leamington with my Burlington team, and I woke up from a nap. I saw all over Instagram that the rule's been changed, and I texted my agent, and then, that's how it happened.
Did you anticipate that this would happen so quickly this season, or was this something that you just had kind of put off in the back of your head and thought, if it happens, great, but otherwise Burlington's going really well right now?
Yeah, kind of that. I wasn't really expecting it, but it's great that it happened.
Tell me about coming into this. You're coming into a team that's been rolling pretty well this season. They've had some ups and downs, bit of a roller coaster, but you come into a brand new coaching staff that are preaching a really new message here in Owen Sound. What's it like to come into that, and what's kind of your feeling of the locker room?
It's a great group of guys and great coaches. It's lots of fun, and hopefully I can play a lot more games here.
What's so far in just a weekend playing in front of this Bayshore crowd? What's been the best part of that for you?
Probably the fans. I don't know if I've ever played in front of that many people, so it was exciting and lots of fun.
Is there anybody in the locker room that's already kind of become like a big brother to you, that's kind of giving you some good advice or really taking you in and made you feel like you're really part of the team?
I've been living with Petrovsky so far, and he's been like that for me, but everyone's been great. Congratulations on being here. It was great to see you on the blue line. You look fantastic in both these games. You got a road trip coming up. All the best to you and your teammates on it. Thank you very much.
Well, now that we've heard from the players who were immediately affected by the NCAA eligibility changes, let's hear from our fellow media. We assembled once again the Media Roundtable containing Greg Cowan of the Owen Sound Sun-Times, Adrian Musso, color commentator on Rogers TV, and Matt Hermes, radio announcer for 560 CFOS.
Guys, of course, the big news in the OHL this week was the NCAA vote, which now has cleared the way for OHL players to be eligible to play. The first one to go is Jackson Parsons from the Kitchener Rangers, and as a result of that, the Owen Sound Attack get Mason Roy to mix into the fold, helping out with the D situation. Whoever wants to start, what do we think of this, and what does this deal mean for the OHL?
Well, you just mentioned the Attack perspective. I'll start there. Obviously, Mason Roy had made a decision that he wanted to pursue playing hockey in the NCAA, and right away this agreement pays dividends to the Attack, able to attract a 16-year-old defenseman who was a second-round pick in the 2024 OHL priority selection, and get him to play his major junior hockey now on his path to the NCAA. So you're going to see a lot of this, I think, with younger players that had plans to play in the NCAA that will now be turning their attention to the OHL, the WHL, the QMJHL, and different major junior leagues across Canada. On the flip side, you mentioned Jackson Parsons, and older players that have been in the OHL and other CHL leagues will have opportunities to, instead of just pursuing youth sports, Canadian University hockey, after their playing careers in major junior, now have that opportunity and that path open up. So it's hard to know what to make of all of it. I don't think it's going to be this big major impact where there's going to be, dozens and dozens and dozens of players that are changing the way they approach their teen years in hockey. But there'll be some cases I don't think it's going to be this big wave, but there's going to be more opportunities for younger players to play major junior that want to play in the NCAA, and more opportunities for players who have gone through major junior to look at an NCAA opportunity rather than just U Sports. So I don't know about the numbers, though, but we'll see.
Yeah, for me, Greg and I were talking yesterday about being contractually obligated. So, like, once Mason Roy signs his contract, right now he's just on that 10-day contract, but say he were to sign fully for the Owen Sound Attack, like, is he going to have a clause that makes him tells him that he has to play 4 years here in Owen Sound, or can he leave after 2 and go on the path that he had already chosen to go to Providence? So he's going to play 2 years in the OJHL and then go to Providence College. So what is that going to... I think there's still some underlying issues that we don't know. Mm-hmm. Maybe the NCAA has already rectified all that and CHL has already rectified that, but I think there's still little things. But as the product of the OHL and the CHL, in my opinion, is only going to grow from this, right? So then you're going to get all these guys that maybe instead of going down to the OJHL or like in Jackson Parson's case, they're going to stay and they're going to battle and try and get that NCAA deal instead of going to the youth sports, which was an option in the past. But I think it's great that Mason Roy's here in Owen Sound, and we saw it, the kid Harding in Brampton yesterday as well make his OHL debut. So it's only good things for the CHL.
I just want to pick up on that because Adrian said something. We don't really know yet all the fine details, but assuming, I think that there's a likelihood that maybe that you'll see more 19-year-olds leave major junior hockey earlier than they would have to go play in the NCAA. But the flip side of that is that we saw in this past OHL priority selection there was a number of top talents. I can name a few quickly: Adam Valentini, Caleb Malholtra, a few players who went the USHL route or other Tier 2 routes to keep their NCAA eligibility intact. They don't have to do that anymore. So I think the flip side will be that you're going to see almost all top-end 16-year-old players play major junior somewhere, and they might only play for 3 years, though. But again, we don't know all the fine details of the agreement yet. As Adrian rightfully pointed out, this is kind of still, in a sense, a bit speculative. But I think Mason Roy's commitments, in that case specifically, I think there's a date for when he's supposed to be starting at Providence. 27-28 is kind of the target, right? So that's a 3-year window.
All that can fluctuate, depending on
sure.
commitments and people going to the NHL or opting out, and with the transfer portal too. Like, people are changing so well. So maybe a defensive spot opens up at Providence and he puts up just say 20 goals and 50 points next year. Would they want him on their team right away?
That's a good point. And I mean, the other side of this too, and Adrian, you've made the point too in the past that you've got to have your grades kept up if you want to be part of this. They're not likely to hand out scholarships to everybody, so you might be able to go, but you might not have a scholarship, which all of a sudden is a whole other thing that Canadians don't tend to think about is what that U.S. tuition looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a cousin that goes to University of Michigan. She pays $80,000 a year, just for that, right? So, if you don't have that scholarship or if you don't have that money up front, then it's going to be really tough to get into those schools. But then you look at the academic side of it as the teacher here, grades are important. People, and it's maybe the hockey culture as a whole, but all these kids come, I got drafted to the OHL, I'm going pro. School's not very important. We hear that often, maybe not all the time, but so they're going to have to keep up their grades. And I heard it from a few scouts and a few colleges that, it's really important to keep up your grades, because if your grades aren't there, they're not even going to look at you. I've had a few friends, baseball in particular, they didn't have the grades, so they had to go to a JUCO before they had up their grades to get to NCAA scholarship. So it's a forever process of keeping those and maintaining those grades and getting that GPA to the grade that they wanted and your SATs.
Guys, I'll ask one more quick thing before we go.
Greg Cowan.
Greg Cowan hasn't gotten in yet. So, Greg, I'm going to ask this to you. Of course, we're recording this right before the Attack play the Sudbury Wolves, trying to increase their winning streak to 3 games. Last night against Kitchener, we saw, the young Attack let things slip away a little bit in the third, but then resilient, won in OT. Where are they at right now? Because you were talking to some of the guys last night. How did it feel to get that win for them, and what's the confidence level like in the room after beating Kitchener?
Well, I think they're really happy to leave last night on a positive note after playing maybe the best 40 minutes of their season early against Kitchener, who's coming in on a 10-game winning streak, and it would have been kind of a sour way to end it, giving up that lead in the third period. But even when they were losing games, that was one of the most low-stress 8-game losing streaks I've been around a hockey team, even with the fans, talking with the fans at practice. The whole mindset of this season, development, making sure the young guys are getting on the ice and growing as players. That seems to be the main focus right now, more than the wins and losses. So,
is it weird that we're all experiencing that same mindset? Like, the fans have got it, the team's got it, we in the media have got it. It just feels like a more positive environment than last year when sometimes it felt like a funeral in here.
Hey, low expectations are the key to a happy life.
And on that note, thank you very much, panel. I appreciate you joining us for our Media Roundtable.
A huge thank you to all of our guests this week who joined us. The Media Roundtable, you just heard them. Greg Cowan, Adrian Musso, Matt Hermes. Appreciate it, gentlemen. Also, thanks to our other guests this week, Leigh Cunningham of the Sarnia Sting, David Bowen, radio play-by-play voice of the Sudbury Wolves, and our players who will now get to play NCAA hockey and in the OHL, Jackson Parsons of the Kitchener Rangers and Mason Roy of the Owen Sound Attack. Should also point out some other firsts that occurred on Sunday's game. David Badkowski made his debut in the Owen Sound Attack lineup, the defenseman who came over in the Colby Barlow trade along with Tristan DeLille. And we got to see German import Max Bleicha score his first OHL goal on Sunday afternoon, and it was a beauty. Congratulations, Max. He had family from Germany in the building to see him finally get that first one. As for Max and the rest of his Attack teammates, they're going to be on the road for a little while. The next 4 home games all on the road, including 3 next week. Attack will officially leave on Wednesday, playing in Peterborough Thursday night, in Kingston on Friday evening. Attack will get to see former teammate Cedric Guindon in Kingston, and then they're off to Ottawa for a Sunday afternoon game against the 67s. Once again, a big thank you to you for taking the time to listen to the Bear Tracker Weekly podcast. This weekend at the arena was stopped by several people who say that they've now discovered the podcast and are loving it, and I can't thank you enough for all the kind words. We do it for you, the Attack fans, and we'll keep doing it as long as you keep loving it. Oh, and I should mention, too, I also did have one question that was asked. Where is Mark McKelvey? Well, Mark has been working down in Kentucky this past week on his other passion, horse racing, and helping to buy some horses. Not his money, though. He says he always loves to spend other people's money. But don't worry, Mark McKelvey will make his way back to the Attack broadcast booth. He is due to take over again for the Attack's next home game, which comes on Saturday, November 23rd, against the Oshawa Generals. I wonder if there's anything significant about that game. I can't put my finger on it just yet, but Attack fans, I know you're going to pack the Bayshore for that one. Get your tickets at attackhockey.com. Have a great week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time at the rink. Cheers.
The Bear Tracker podcast is produced in association with Blackburn Media from the CKNX studios in Wingham, Ontario. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe at Bear Tracker Pod on social media and wherever you get your podcasts.